Welcome back to the channel, guys. So in this video, I'm going to be taking you through step by step and showing you how to build an extremely simple mantle. I've built other mantles on this channel in the past, but this one by far is the easiest. It's a simple shelf mantle, meaning it doesn't have legs that go to the floor that support it, also known as a floating mantle, essentially just hanging on the wall. So we'll go through the whole thing, the whole process. It's easy, basic tools, nothing too crazy, and we're going to be using all Windsor 1 to accomplish this. So like I mentioned, these are all Windsor 1 products. We got our 1x12, 1x8, 1x6. This is WOHC001 or Windsor 1 header cap 01 and WOWC 003. Yeah, I kind of memorized these. I'm a little obsessed, but I'll link these down in the description. I'll actually link a catalog where you can check all this stuff out. And on that note of me being obsessed with the Windsor 1 products, I do want to mention real quick here at the beginning, this video is not sponsored by Windsor 1, but full disclosure, I do know some of the staff there, and one of the guys in particular has bought me barbecue before, and if you consider that a bribe, then I guess this is a sponsored video. But yeah, I'm a pretty cheap date. Barbecue sandwich. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut my 1x8s down to size. I'm cutting these to 7 1/4, and these are going to be the pieces that have the flutes on them. So 7 1/4 by 7 1/4 makes a true square, and if you didn't know, 1x8s are 7 1/4. So I use that square to bring it over, just so I can line up my blade line shadow with it easier, and I always do that when I'm cutting pretty much anything bigger than 1x6. Just checking if the saw is still calibrated and everything looks good. So the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and lay out for my flutes. Now I'm doing this all by hand because I only have 2 of these to do. If I had multiple flutes to do or just multiple pieces, probably would set up some kind of jig, but just laying everything out with a square. And then here I'm literally just using the tape to lay it out. So it can be a little tricky, like I said, if you have a ton of these, but it's not too bad. Each one took me about 10 minutes, so I have 20 minutes invested in making these flutes here. I have it sped up for the sake of time, obviously, and there's that bowl cutting bit that I'm making these flutes with, and this is just a jig that I made to cut flutes. It's literally just a piece of wood to hold the router and a slot cut in it. I made this for another job, and it comes in handy for small flutes like this. So here I got a 3/4 setup block, and I'm just checking to make sure all my spacing is 3/4, and it was, so I went ahead and made the other one. So now I have 2 of these. So once I had those 2 done, I went ahead and got the sides of those boxes cut. These are going to be 6 inches. That's the depth of these. So I cut down 4 pieces at 6 inches. And I cut pockets in all of these pieces using the Castle machine right here. This TSM12 is amazing, and it'll make you use pocket holes way more often. So I got some glue on those joints and then just some spring clamps to hold those together. And I'll do that for both boxes. And throw some pins in there as well, just to kind of add a little bit more reinforcement, but that glue should be plenty. So once I have those 2 little boxes made, I can kind of get the middle piece of the mantle. This is the piece that spans across and connects the 2. So here's how this is going to be constructed. We got our main kind of fluted box pieces here, and then we've got this mantle piece that spans the middle coming across right there and meeting up with that. So I want that set back 1.5 inches. So I just got 1.5 inch spacer block. I can just line those up and then screw that into the box there with the pocket holes on the back. So this will be pronounced, and that'll give us some nice architectural detail as the moldings wrap around it. So I'll just add some glue to this end grain onto that primer. Yeah, I know it probably doesn't do a ton, but it does help me sleep better at night. And then I'll tighten those down, snug them up to get some squeeze out. Those screws are probably plenty to hold it, especially the way I'm going to install this. But I just have to do it. And here's a bird's eye view of how that's looking so far. And you can see it's really simple construction. So I'll move it over here to the cut hub so I can work on it better. So here's where some of our moldings start coming in. The way I install these is kind of a quirky thing about me. I don't use a tape measure. I kind of just hold them up and mark them with a pencil. For me personally, I just feel like I get a more precise and accurate fit the first time doing it this way, rather than stretching a tape out. Yes, I can read a tape measure, that's not the issue, but like I said, this is kind of just a quirky thing that I do, and yeah, I'd even do this on job sites. So I get this glued together and it looks good. And I'll do the same thing for the other side, then I'll have to cut the middle piece that connects these 2 pieces of molding. So that'll be 2 inside 45s and that'll drop in place. Just checking the fit here. Everything checked out, so I went ahead and glued it, and you know it, spring clamped it. These spring clamps, I get a lot of questions about these, especially on my shorts feed. It's a lot of new people who are new to the channel who've never seen me use these. They're actually really popular, and they have a ton of tension on them. Don't ever put your finger in these things. They will just pierce right through it. But you can see nice clean miters. Love to see that. Just checking the fit on the back side, and that should all line up flush with the back there. So everything's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and run a bead of glue on top of this. Primer to primer glue. I know, again, it's not like something that is gonna make a super strong bond, but it's better than nothing, and it does help me sleep better at night. So I'll set this on gently. And here you can see me utilizing those pockets that I cut in our pieces at the beginning, and I'm using those to secure that header cap to the 1x8. And those pockets, really, it seems like a lot of extra work, but that TSM12 makes quick work of it. So here I'm measuring the top shelf. This is gonna have a 3/4 inch reveal all the way around. And that'll be cut out of a 1x12 and then ripped down on the table saw to get that proper reveal. And then once I have that shelf top cut, I just use a little round over bit on both sides, top and bottom, to give it a kind of bullnose look. That's what they were asking for. So it kind of softens the edge and doesn't look so sharp. So at this point, I lay the assembly on the 1x that I just cut and ripped down, the shelf, I guess you could say. And then I trace the outline once I have my reveal set. And this tells me right where I can put my glue, so I don't have squeeze out going everywhere or just unnecessary glue. So I get that covered and then gently set this on there so I don't make a mess of it. And I'm going to tack this in with some 23 gauge pins. These are 3/4 inch pins just going in the top of that molding. This is not the final install of this. I'm going to put some 16 gauge nails from the top down to really secure it. But this at least makes sure that it's not going to move, and it's going to help that glue kind of stay in that same spot rather than sliding around. So while that's setting up and in place, we can go ahead and bring out our next molding piece, and it's going to be this cap right here. This is a wainscot cap, but you can tell this is not a wainscot, but I'm using this molding that's called a wainscot cap. And that's what's cool about this Windsor collection, is you can basically use anything and it's going to look good together because the proportions are correct. So it's really hard to mess up when you have the right molding, because you can mix and match collections like Greek Revival, Colonial Revival, and you'd have to try really hard to make it look bad because they kind of set you up for success. So you can see I assembled that the same way I did the header cap, just using spring clamps and fitting it piece by piece, and everything is checking out and looking good. So at this point, we can go ahead and secure that piece to the 1x8 with some 16 gauge finish nails. These are 2.5 inch nails. And if you remember from earlier, I did have those pocket holes cut in the bottom of that 1x8, and I chose not to utilize them here. So those are gonna be left empty, and these 16 gauge nails will hold it plenty good. So at this point, I'm gonna get the mantle flipped over and get some 16 gauge nails. These are 2.5 inches well, tacked in from the top going down into that molding, into that header cap. And these are gonna really hold this thing together, so I don't have to depend on those pins and glue to, secure this thing. So once I got that complete, you can see the back of this profile here, or I guess the bottom of it rather, how it has that little lip, that little notch. Since it is a wainscot cap, it is made like that, so a 1x material can just drop into it. So that's why I chose to use it here. This is a complete, original design as far as the way I was going to construct this. I did have a designer tell me what they want for this and just said make it happen, so I chose to do it this way. So that little block right there kind of makes everything level, so when I put these pieces in here, they have something to rest on. And I'm going to have a seam down here on the bottom. I'm going to pocket screw that together because it is the bottom. No one's ever really going to see it, and it can be sanded down flush. It'll look really good. So I'll throw some pockets in that kind of long piece that spans across the bottom, and I'll get these screwed together. So when it comes to attaching these, it's going to be the same exact thing. However, I am going to switch over to 1.5 inch nails so I don't have any risk of blowout here. And these are going to be, again, 16 gauge finish nails. And that should do the trick. And that seam right there will be easily sanded out and basically never seen. Just a lot easier than trying to make that little notch cut out of a full stick. But yeah, look at that. That detail just looks so good. All right, guys, that concludes this build. Super simple mantle build. You saw how easy this was constructed. Essentially, it's just creating boxes and then wrapping those boxes in molding. If I had to say one thing about this that may be a little kind of on the intermediate side, it would be making those flutes. But even that is not hard if you make a little jig like the one you saw me use. So yeah, there we go, simple mantle. I won't be installing this in this video. That'll probably be the next video because they're not ready for it until like next week. But yeah, I'll show you how I install it. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this simple build, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.